Uh, Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spiritual Journey podcast. My name is Nimesh and I'm your host. I started this podcast to really guide people on their spiritual journey, to really help you understand how simple it is, because we as humans, we complicate it. And I always love by starting just by saying thank you, thank you, thank you. I feel so blessed with this podcast. I started it as a little passion project and I had no idea how far it was going to go. So thank you for all the support. Thank you for all the listeners and all the messages I receive on a weekly basis. I feel very, very blessed. I am an Akashic Record reader, an Akashic trainer, podcast host, podcast creator, as well as a spiritual coach and mentor. And just right now, I really feel like we're going through a major energetic shift. And I love guiding people to shine their light, really to understand who they are. I love what I get to do. And I also love this podcast. I get to have so many amazing guests, and I'm excited to have Heather join me in this week's podcast. And Heather, I'd love for you to, as we start, to introduce yourself.
Thanks for having me on your platform. It's an honor to be sharing some time and space with you in this way. So, my background is I've always sort of been in connection with the spiritual realm. When I was very young, I was introduced to it through religion and didn't quite quench the thirst. So, in my teens, I was doing some self-hunting to see different methods and techniques that would serve. So I started meditating in university. And then in my early 20s, I got introduced to the physical asana of yoga and became a yoga teacher, which satiated me for a good 20 years, leading retreats and workshops and classes and all the things. And then there was a pull in me to want to go deeper with students. And I knew it wasn't a big enough container in a weekly yoga class to be able to access that. So I just put the prayer and petition out to Source to show me the way in which I can offer that in a very authentic way. And unbeknown to me, I landed in the field of the Akasha through basically I was when we went into shutdown, because I was a teacher, the studios that I was working at immediately closed. And then my husband is in aviation, so he was also out of work. And so we were both home managing the children. And so it just gave me lots of opportunity to be able to be in my own practice. And through the practice, I was guided to reach out to an individual that I knew and ask her to have an Akashic session with me, which is where I thought it would end. But then in the reading, she shared with me that I access the records in a very unconscious way. And if I wanted to bring it more into the consciousness, she would show me how to do so. So it was a very fast trajectory from there. I went through her version of what was a part 1 and part 2 and part 3, kind of 1 month apart. And then I was actually leading my own trainings about 6 months later. So it's been quick, but it feels like it's been there all along, and that's why it's able to be here as easily as it is. So primarily I work one-on-one with people offering spiritual mentorship, and then I teach Akashic Record trainings and offer Akashic Record sessions. So I'm really happy to be in your arms today and see where we can share conversation in this together.
So beautiful. I mean, there's so many parallels between what we do. So I love it. And anyone, let me say this, I feel like we all have the ability to connect with the records. I feel like if you've done a meditation, if you channel a message in some way, you've touched on the edge of the records. But it's always great to have somebody on here that is so well connected to the records. I can feel your energy, just so everyone knows. We chose to open the records before we started recording. It really gives us an opportunity to go deeper, and I'm hoping you can feel the energy that's coming from the recording, from our voices. I love the records. It really has changed my life, and it's interesting on lockdown, right? I always think of lockdown as, before lockdown, everyone was like, "Oh, we're too busy. We haven't got time to do the healing," and then Mother Nature comes along and sends us all to the naughty corner to kind of either do the healing, or not, right? It's a choice. And, it feels like everything was divinely timed for you, right? And it's just, it's a gift that your soul knew how to do. I don't believe I train anybody on the records. I believe I guide the human towards the soul already knows how to do. And
it's beautiful.
yeah, I just love it. And actually, I think I might mention my story to you, but I was guided to the records when my mentor friend left this realm. Similar time, March 2020, just as lockdown hit. And she's now one of my guides, and she's the one that pushed me to learn how to read Akashic Records. And sure, I haven't looked back since. So the podcast, the mentorship, training on Akashic Records, everything I do is somehow come from the records. So I feel very, very blessed. And it's always nice to meet another Akashic reader, trainer. And so yeah, I'm led to really kind of talk about the current energy. I mentioned at the beginning, I feel like there's like everybody's going through something. Maybe it's a rebirth, maybe it's a reset, maybe it's like a mass upgrade, whatever you want to call it. So I'm curious, what's your take on the current energy? How are you feeling when you're opening people's records, when you're mentoring them? What I feel like the energy shifted recently. Still intense. I think we're in that intense period. It is what it is. But I'm curious, what's your take on the current energy?
Yeah, I feel it in a myriad of different ways. So what I'm noticing with my training, and I agree with you, training is always a word that I feel challenged actually saying. I like to say offering. And so when I first started offering that, when I would move through, so the way I'd actually be curious to hear how you share teaching people and guiding them towards reading the records. But how I do it is I work with first teaching them how to read their own records. So I call that part one or layer one. And then we move into reading other people's records. And then we move into expanding the lens and opening it to plants, animals, business, celestial, wherever you want to go. I kind of let the group guide where we go in that part three. But when I first started, I set these up to be a month apart in between sessions to allow for integration between it. And then about a year and a half ago, I've decreased it to 3 weeks. And then I just changed, I had my date set up for the fall to be 3 weeks apart. And then I just got the hit that it's too long. So I've actually decreased that to 2 weeks. So
Wow.
I'm fascinated to sit back and watch at how fast consciousness is accelerating right now. And the integration is happening at a much faster rate than even a couple of years ago, right? So that's the first
Yeah,
place that I see it. Yeah.
definitely a shift, right?
The other way that I see it is like one of the ways that I support people in understanding their own essence is by going through, I go through 4 main clairs with them. So I do like an energetic body scan, and I'll go through claircognizance, their inner knowing, clairsentient, the visceral feeling, clairvoyant, and clairaudio, so the sight and the sound. And when I first started offering Akashic sessions, I would find that people would be predominant in one of the clairs and the other ones would be quite quiet. And I can't remember the last time that I've done an Akashic reading where someone hasn't been multi-claired, meaning that they're firing on 3 or more cylinders to be able to communicate with consciousness. So that's another way that's super fun. And I'm enjoying that. And then the third way that I see the current climate is a lot of people are coming to me feeling overwhelmed with the upgrades that they're having. So it's like, they're feeling like it's too much. And the conversation that we're having, if we get really honest with it, is the human mind has an expectation that it takes a certain amount of integration or time to be able to integrate. And when we're sitting in the human parameters of ourselves, we want to control the integration phase. And so this is where it can start to feel overwhelming because we think it should take longer than it is. And all of a sudden the next upgrade is coming through. And so if I can, usually when I'm massaging it out with the individual, if we can get into the part of them that's more connected to their divine energy or their higher self, whatever languaging someone wants to put in there, and we ask the same question, does it feel overwhelming from here? Usually the response is no. It's actually like, it can be intense and it can be a bit of a roller coaster, but it's, the energy is moving in such a way that it's manageable. And so that when they think that they're going into a refractory period, they're actually being rebounded back into an upgrade or a download phase. And if they just stay in sort of the ride of what's happening, they're fine. And it's only when they try and like hijack it and control it from the human
Yeah.
conditioning that it starts to create problems for them. So I find that really interesting to
Yeah.
play with too. Yeah.
It's yeah. I mean, I totally resonate with so much of what you say in terms of if I start with kind of the people I mentor. I mean, I do a 12-week program. It's interesting. You were talking about the four clairs. I work on people's four bodies, right? So it's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, right? Because whatever your blockages are, whatever your karmic blocks, whatever, it could be in any one of your bodies, right? So I'll always start with the physical because looking after the vessel your soul's in, and then the mental, which is quite a lot about ego, and then I'll move on to the emotion and definitely the spiritual. So I do love to take people on a journey, but I feel like all of us and certainly the people I work with have been preparing for that accelerated journey.
Mm.
Because when they join the 12 weeks, it's like a crazy roller coaster. So much is coming up, so much is being released, and it's that. And I agree, it's the human expectation that really slows people down. It's that the expectation that we can really control what's coming next, the expectation that how things are going to be. That's what really, when you let go and you trust, that's when I feel there's freedom and truly your gifts coming through. Truly, because honestly, any control we have is for me is just an illusion. Our
Mm.
guides, the universe, have so many bigger plans that we can never imagine. If our mind, our ego, tries to control everything, tries to understand everything, it's going to be more difficult. The more that we can guide people just to listen to their heart, listen to their guides, shift from I think to I feel. I really feel it's kind of it opens up a different level of connection, a different level of because we're upgrading. I mean, look at this year. It's like every time I feel like I channel a message for the month or the period, it's like still an intense energy, still an intense energy, and it's like, wait, hold on, I thought it was going to lighten up. It's different, but it's still intense because we're all
Mm.
going through this mass upgrade. We're all going, and it's just if we can just let go of any. Yeah, just look at the last 4 or 5 years. Have we really had any control?
Right.
Who could have
Yeah.
predicted all of us being on lockdown and
Yeah.
going through the same thing? And just then, if you look at this year, everybody's been closing karmic cycles, and so many people I talk to, the friend circle's gotten smaller. Things have changed. People that you expected to be in your life forever are no longer in your life. And it's just like,
Mm.
well, so much change, and we've just got to let go and really trust whatever's coming next. But that's hard. I get it because we want to understand. Everybody can feel change inside them, can feel something different coming. It's like, what is it going to be? And I agree. The more that we can help and guide people to let go, and we've got to do the same,
Yeah.
the easier it gets. And you asked me about Akashic training. It's interesting. I do individual Akashic training, and I also do it over 3 sessions. Um, I like at least a week in between because it depends on the individual. So it really kind of is driven by the individual. But I want people to one experience a reading so they get to receive.
Hmm.
Um, and then, so you get to experience what it's like to receive and connect with your guides when someone else is opening your records. And then the second session is always guiding the individual to open their own records, what it feels like, what the vibration, the energy is around, because it is different for everybody. But they get to feel their soul family at a deeper level. I love doing it because it's just like it's such a different feeling open your own records compared to receiving a reading. And it's
Yeah.
like it opens up doors that both are important, but it opens up your own doors. And I know some people have some rules. I encourage people to experiment. I encourage people to open the records before they go to sleep and see how their dreams are.
Mm.
Kind of open the records before they meditate. Open the records before they go for a walk. If they're going somewhere, if they're open the records in the morning and see what your day's like. Right? It's just for me, it's like building a relationship, building a connection. It's an energy, it's a vibration, and everybody's different. Like some people love to channel right. Some people love to just And the other thing is that I find like a lot of people get frustrated in the way they receive messages, right? Some people like expect to see things straight away, and sometimes it's a journey to see things, right? And it's like sometimes you just hear things or feel things. And it's just helping and guiding people to open up to a new modality their soul already knows is beautiful. And the third session, they get to open my records. And if it's sometimes I do it jointly with another healer, Stacy, but it's that, my guides are pretty intense, but they're fun. So you get to experience what it's like opening someone else's records. So that for me is you get to experience all facets. It's interesting. I haven't added opening records for plants, buildings, homes, whatever. I mean, I do teach it if somebody asks, but so yeah, that's definitely food for thought. I've definitely been getting the message that I need to guide people to open the records of their homes more. I feel like there's such a history. I mean, I've done it for my place many times, and I feel like your home needs to be like your base chakra.
Right.
And if it needs cleansing, healing. So yeah, I've been getting that message, and maybe this podcast and your message is kind of confirming it. So, but it's really interesting. So I'd love to know more. How has the records impacted your life?
Well, let me ping off of what you just shared there, because and it'll answer your question at the same time. When I first started teaching, the layer that I had the most like uncomfortableness with was the third part, when we just kind of go rogue a bit and go into plants and animals and all the things. I used to really sort of like feel like it wasn't as important as the other two ways. So what I love about the three parts. So the very first time I taught the training was it was optional. You do part one. If you want to move on to part two, you can. If you want to move on to part three, you can. And then after the first one, I was like, for myself, I was like, oh, this is really a disservice in the way that I'm offering it, because what I notice is when people are learning to access their own records, one of the biggest ways that they can learn how to read their own records is actually by taking the time to read someone else's records, because then they have a contrast, right? They have something to be able to compare it to and be like, oh, I didn't realize that when this is happening, that this is actually me reading my own records. I just thought it was this thing that I do because I'm so always in my own body that I didn't see it as anything separate from how I normally show up. And then the part three, what I love now about it, what I've really grown to appreciate, is it really helps to confirm and cement the interconnectedness between all living things, all things that have consciousness. And so that's how I've grown to really revere it. And I love to know my students in the way that they're passionate about learning by the time we get to the third part. So, sometimes I have Ayurvedic practitioners and essential oil workers and botanists, and they're so keen to go into the plants. And some are kind of like, well, I'm doing plants because I'm in the group and we'll see what happens. But then when they're in the shared experience, to really feel the persona of a plant and to feel almost like its essence and its heartbeat, it is an aha moment in such a way that it's like, oh, I knew we were connected, but I never had the mystical experience of feeling the sacred in this way. I've always just known it, but I haven't had the experience of feeling it. And that to me is the essence of the mystic. And so then it starts to take them into deeper layers. And I think for myself, that's probably what the Akasha has done most readily for me, is the amount of sort of study and contemplation that I've done through yoga. I feel like the physical practice and the meditation practice took me to certain areas, but it didn't open up as many doorways as working with the Akashic Records does. So now there's like, the superficial yogi in me wouldn't want to kill the ant that's in my home, because yogis don't do that. So I'd move it outside. But now that I'm in the Akashic Records, I'm like, well, I can feel and sense your essence now. And of course I would never want to do that. And so it's a lived experience through it, rather than just, well, this is the thing we do because we're yogis, and it's not harmful. It's harmful to hurt the ant. Yeah.
I love the magic of when people, and it's like you can hear in your voice the magic of the records and the impact it's had on you. I just love it. It's just, I somehow feel like sometimes I need to protect it, but records don't need protecting. They're just there. It's just so beautiful to just experience it. And you're right. I mean, we're all one, right? So opening the records of a plant, and feeling the energy, the vibration, and the oneness sounds amazing. So yeah, definitely something that's the message I'm getting, is something I need to do more of. So thank you for that.
Oh, good, good.
As we go on this journey, and as I feel like lots more of us have been activated, and you know, whether it's a healer, whether it's a guide, mentor, whatever you want to call yourself, I feel that everybody's been pushed to rebirth and understand and kind of be clear on what they're here to do. So I'm again curious, what are your students going through, and the people that you're mentoring in terms of, you talked about their journey being accelerated. What advice would you have for people who are going through something? I mean, so many people give it labels: dark night of the soul, rebirth, whatever you want to call it.
Mm.
It feels like a lot of people are going through something. And have you got any advice you'd give to people in terms of if they feel like they're going through something? What advice would you give them?
I think what I'm playing with the most right now is the okay, there's a few layers here. What I notice when people, let's say they're making a big shift. So let's say that I'm working with someone who's a leader in corporate, and then they're coming in and doing an Akashic program with me. It's a big shift for them to move from one field into the other. And I think the part where we don't give enough attention to or credit towards, it's a couple of things. When we get the download or the intuitive hit to make a change, oftentimes there's a financial risk connected to it. So let's say, for example, someone's getting the download. You know what? Your lover's in Texas and you're living in California. It's time to make the shift. You gotta make the move. And so it's well, what if I move to Texas and I can't find work? And what if it doesn't work out and then I got to come all the, there's a bit of a financial shift there, right? Or when people get the hit to like leave corporate and go into energetic work. A lot of what I think gets misplaced is that we assume that people aren't listening to the signs, and that's why they're not taking action. Rather than, what I'm playing with lately is like, what if everyone's hearing the signs? And it's just really scary to take the risk.
Yeah.
And part of what I love to play with, it comes up a lot in the program, is we spend some time really looking at our relationship to money and how we can start to place money in the same category as love and help to really clean up our conversations and our story behind money. Because if money wasn't a factor with a lot of the downloads that people receive, I think more people would actually act on
Yeah.
it, right?
It's interesting, right? It's like the question, if money was no object, what would you do?
Right. Yeah.
Simple, right?
It's simple. And if we want to be really honest, the energetic realm that I feel so many people are really drawn towards, because I can feel the urgency of the uncertainty of what the next few years is creating.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are really feeling the pull to be of service. And yet we still live in a time where the energetic business hasn't proven itself to be financially stable. And so it's really challenging for people who really heart and soul want to be in the vocation of service in an energetic way. And yet they're like, most people that are in this are living hand to mouth, right? Month to month. And
Yeah.
for me, it's not so much the service, but the type of individual's relationship to money when they come into the energy work. And so I know I'm deviating a little bit, but that's what I'm noticing a lot, is that when people are in the overwhelm or they're in the do I, don't I, like the choice, the fork in the road, it I just offer so much compassion, because I don't think that people aren't listening. It's that they're listening and they're so scared to take that step.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
conflict, right? Head and
Yeah.
heart.
Yeah.
There's, you can feel the change coming, but it's, it's your ego doesn't want you to keep you safe. It's like it's a risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's interesting when you compare love and money. I've been hearing that a lot recently, and they're both a vibration, right? They're both
Mm-hmm.
an energy, both a vibration. And, it's like so many people are abundant but struggling. So abundance can be in any area, right? In any energy. But you might be struggling financially, but you're abundant. And it's just, money is a vibration, it's an energy, and it's just like love. If you don't embrace the energy, if you don't enjoy having it around you, if you don't enjoy being with it, why would it be near you? Why would
Hmm.
it? So when you feel the energy of love or money, if you can sit with it and just feel the energy and the vibration around you, how do you truly feel about it as a vibration?
Right.
It's easy to think about money as a physical thing, right?
Yeah.
But it's like when you think about it as an energy, as a vibration. If you think about, if you when you think about money and the vibration, if it scares you, then why would that vibration be near you? If it excites you and you want to spend it, you want to enjoy it, you want money to be with you, and then maybe the vibration changes. It's interesting you talk about the corporate world. I'm not sure if we talked about this before, but I come from the corporate world, right? I went through the journey of, very senior role, and I went through my awakening, and I've been creating this healing business in parallel for a few years, but it got to a point, only January of this year, where I couldn't stay in corporate. I just couldn't. And, yes, it was, I guess in ways funding my dreams, but I couldn't do it.
Right.
I was struggling with the vibration and the energy of being in corporate. And interestingly enough, some of my clients are corporate. I'm getting a pull to create stuff for corporates to become more conscious. So I've spent that much time in corporate for a reason.
Yeah.
So, and it's just, and I feel like people in corporate are starting to awaken and are starting to ask different questions. I feel corporations are trying to do things differently. It's just the culture's changed, and just it's a really interesting time. But at the same time, financially people are struggling. I feel we've shifted from a masculine vibration to a feminine vibration, and
Yes.
masculine is struggling to find identity in terms of, if you look at the last few centuries or whatever, it's all been about the masculine. It's all been about power. It's all been about wars and money and corporations, and all of a sudden we're shifting to a vibration around healing, right? Around people speaking the truth, around being in a loving energy, and hence why people are struggling to find the identity, right? Finding identity between who they were and who they're going to be, finding identity between the masculine and the feminine. Yeah, that's why I feel it's a really interesting time, because as we move into this new age, which I do feel is more feminine, i.e., around more the healing side, the more the gift side, and the more away from the masculine side. But we all need balance, right? We all need masculine and feminine. It's not like
Right.
you can all have one. But I wonder
Well,
how you feel about that. How do you
the
feel about the balance?
the if your listeners are aligning with the conversation of that we're shifting into a more feminine conversation, how I relate to the feminine is she very much wants to be revealed. And so to tie it back to where you started the conversation, where so many people are going through changes, like it or not, because they can no longer pretend that what is in front of them is not in front of them. And so the feminine energy, as she starts to get momentum, she churns, right? She really, it's like stirring a soup and pulling whatever's on the bottom up towards the surface. And her essence is designed to reveal to us our nature. And the masculine, if you want to play with it in this sort of metaphorical way, it holds the container of the feminine churning. It's the banks of the river while the river flows inside. And so when we're wanting to be more in the expression of the feminine, we have to bring the masculine along, because those banks need to be very thick, very strong,
Yeah.
so that they don't leak and break and create like like a flood on the plane. So that the mass, if the feminine energy is accelerating and leaving the masculine behind, there's a lot of dysfunction that happens there, because you start the churn, you start the transformation, but then it gets interrupted in some way, and then you can't see it through, and you're kind of left in the void and trying to figure out where your feet are, right? So I agree with you 100%. I think we're in a strong feminine, but there's a big part of me that really doesn't want to leave the masculine behind as we do this. And
We
so
can't.
we
As you say, we
can't.
can't.
And so
Yeah.
even to the point where like some sisters, invited me, they wanted me to go on like a women's gathering retreat weekend. And I just would have loved if the men were holding the space for the women on that weekend, but it wasn't. It was all women. And part of me is like, I love you all, and I don't want to leave the masculine behind. So I just chose to stay back. And it was they had a beautiful experience, but that's part of where I'm playing. We can't encourage one and deny the other.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting on the healing side, right? It's that more of my clients are still women, right? Still on the female, especially on the healing side, right?
Likewise.
And it's but I am getting more inquiries from the males, and I am having more open conversations. So I can feel a shift, and but there's so many groups that are women only, and yeah, sometimes I wonder, in terms of where's the energy and the vibration, the healing for men, right? And it's just, like I said, some of the people I'm working with, especially on the male side, I can feel the balance in them starting to come through. I feel like the male voice is going to be needed just maybe the same as the female voice, right? It's that there's an energy and a vibration, and I don't really want to make it about masculine and feminine, because I feel like we're all going through that challenge of finding that balance. But I just feel as generally the feminine is becoming more prominent, that's where people are struggling to find their identity. And it's an interesting journey that everyone, it's like when you look on the outside, it's kind of interesting to watch and guide people, because it's shifting and people are struggling with really understanding what's shifting. They can feel it. We all have that empathic ability, that energy to feel the vibration around us changing. And change for humans sometimes can be scary. It excites me, but maybe I'm just crazy. But yeah, I just, I love just feeling the change and the shift in the vibration and just allowing it to happen, but just feeling it. It's so beautiful.
Well, I'm sensing like a real strong equanimous nature between you respecting the ego and respecting the divine nature of yourself. So when change, which is inevitable, like it's all energy, so it's always
It's the only
changing.
constant. Yeah.
The part of you that delights in it is the recognition that you're not denying the ego where it wants to put up its red flags and warnings, but it's also not preventing you from having new experiences and seeing what's happening. And so that's a very, like, for me, like an equanimous relationship where there's no hierarchy for you between ego and divine, right? Whereas when we play that, even the divine mass, like, I agree, like we live in a three-dimensional plane and how we understand life is through contrast. I mean, this is part of why we're here, is to experience contrast. So when we've had, and I would say the majority of women have had a big portion of their life, myself included, heavily dosed in the masculine. Sometimes we need to abandon it so that we can understand what the feminine is and go to the extreme end of the feminine. Maybe that's what we're in the middle of right now, is having this sort of extreme pull to the other side. And then eventually, when we start to revere both, we come back into the space between, and we can just sit there and hold space for voice for both of them. But I mean, I won't get into the politics of it, but I've been very proud of the masculine fortitude that has really shone through with some very extreme, watery opinions. And it's like, thank God the masculine is here, because I don't know where we were headed, but it's kind of pulling it back in, right? Which is great. Yeah.
And that's the thing. If you look for it, you'll find it, right?
Yeah.
And but it's interesting when you talk about the ego, because I feel sometimes the ego gets a bad rap. It's not a bad thing. It's not trying to hurt you. It just doesn't want to. He wants to keep you safe. And it's not so, ego, Earth Guide only. It's just, he wants to keep you safe. Sometimes you just need to talk to your ego and say, I don't need to be safe. I'm good. But it is, your head and your heart both needed. It's not like you can it's great to be heart led. I'm definitely more heart led than head led, but the journey I've been on, when I started in corporate, I was very much head led, right? I was very much determined to become super successful, super focused, but it's just my journey took me on on that route to become much more kind of balanced, I guess.
Right.
I always love asking. Go on.
I just want to, because I knew you were going to change topics a bit, but I would love to just hear a little bit more on this part, where I see sort of just tying a few threads here together. If we look at the biggest purse strings, like the biggest financial backings globally, they're mostly corporate based, right?
Yeah.
And so if we want to be part of the change, this is part of the reason why I love to invite people into cleaning up their money conversations and their money stories, because we need to be sitting at the table with the others that have the larger pockets of money so that we can have a boardroom conversation on decision making, right? So the part of you that's pulled to work with corporate, I think is possibly, or I feel it's leaning into the conversation of this is another version of the masculine. We cannot leave this behind. And so how can we start to integrate more people that are in the corporate world that have a really good fundamental understanding on how to make money and can start to teach the energetic practitioners that version, and then the energetic practitioners can come in and show them how to be more connected to spirit. And this is where I love that you want to be more involved in this community, because I do too, but I don't have the corporate background. I'm like, if someone's willing to let me come in, let me show you what I can do, but I don't have the introduction there.
Yeah. And again, it's interesting. We open the records. You're reading my records on the. I love it. I love it. But I've always known that. Look, I spent so many years in corporate for a reason, so I do have the connections, and I can have a different conversation. It's still sometimes difficult because they have structure and a certain way of doing things, but I can feel a shift.
Mm-hmm. I think there's
And
a hunger, not just a shift. There's such a
yeah,
longing to have more real estate in the non-physical realm.
yeah,
People are desperate for it.
yeah. Again, it depends. Some of the old, there's a resistance too, right? It's just there's an opening. It's just beautiful just to feel the vibration, the energy of it. But as we talk about the records, I always love asking other readers, when you open the records, what do you feel? How if you could describe to our listeners, when you open the records, what's your experience? What do you feel around you?
So I look at it as kind of like a GPS signal. So every time I open someone or something's records, it has a different feel to it. So what I love to do is, if I'm opening someone else's records, I love to take the first few minutes and just describe their field to them. It helps to attune us before we go into the depths that we go into in the session. But I also just delight in the honor to know someone in such an intimate way when we've literally just met, right? That to me is probably the most like joy that I get is I'm someone that really has a hard time with chit chat and like superficial conversations. So that's I think why I enjoy the record so much, is because it's this permission to go intimate, but in a way that is very connected to their own essence. So if I'm opening up someone's record, sometimes it'll open up. So I have a strong clairsentience. So sometimes it'll be like a whole body whoosh when I open up their records. Sometimes I'll get a lot of pressure in the third eye. Sometimes it'll open up from the heart space. So there's usually a certain space within the body that it opens from. Not always, but usually. And then it kind of unfolds from there. So if I can't get a feel of their tribe, then I'll call their tribe in to come a little bit closer. And sometimes people I find work more with the broader plane of the Akasha than specific individualized guides and teachers. So I'll work their records from that perspective. For myself, it's a little tingling on the top of my head every time I open it. And I can't initiate that sensation. I've never felt that sensation in any other capacity in my life. So it's literally like little smurfs on my head, like a little dance, and it's a little tingling right on the crown of my head. And that's just how I know that I'm in my records. And then same as you, I'll casually slip in at certain times during the day. And how I know I'm in my records there is that I feel almost like I'm able to get a bigger perspective of what's taking place in front of me right now. I'm holding a lot of different perspectives rather than like a really narrow focus.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, and as you said, for me, I've opened the records for me so often that I feel like I don't need to say the prayer, or I call on the records when they come to me whenever they need it. It's a partnership. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
And but I agree, when I'm reading for somebody else, it's such a blessing, because the person's given me access to their soul, their guides. It's a soul contract, but it's such a beautiful feeling. And I'll always start by asking who I'm reading for, the person, to just be open to feeling the energy, because I want them to feel the love of the guides. I want them to feel how much love there is for. So I always love. So my intro for them is always just to feel the energy and be open to just feeling the love from the guides, because there's always, for me, whenever I open someone else's records, it's always like an overwhelming feeling of love from the guides, and I really want the person I'm reading for to feel it too, because it's such a blessing to feel it. And I love doing it, because I don't think I've ever had an instance where the person hasn't felt the energy and the vibration around them. It's just and part of what I'm trying to do is also, I want them to have a strong connection with their guides. In theory, then don't need me to open the records, right? They can do it for
Yeah, you're
themselves.
empowering them.
Yeah, 100%, because we all have
Yeah.
the ability, right? It's just sometimes the human's forgotten, and we just need to guide them. So I love it. I love it. So as we get to, I know I can talk about the records for hours, by the way, but as we kind of coming to near the end, I mean, do you anything that's coming to you that you feel the collective needs to hear, that you'd love to share with them?
I kind of feel like going the opposite. I feel like we're hearing a lot. And so rather than imposing something else to listen to, um, I love to point out that, the space where there's no sound, so the pause between our conversation, that too is the potential energy of the Akasha. When we close the eyes and there's the space, those of you that are clairvoyant, there's the space between the visuals, between the colors, whatever it is you see when you close your eyes, that too is the Akasha. And so allowing ourselves the opportunity to listen to the inky black darkness and not assume that it's a space of nothingness, because it's also wanting to share with us and engage with us. And it doesn't always have to be in the traditional ways of setting aside time and meditating. It's just even listening to you speak. I'm listening to the sound of your heart at the same time, the pause between your thoughts and catching what's in there as well. And yeah.
Yeah, I love it. There's sometimes a lot more power in silence than there is the words. And our vibration, our energy, our aura is sometimes so much more powerful than the words that we use. So I love it. I love, and there is this power. Sometimes I just love just sitting in nature and just being, and just, there's so much power in silence. I love it. So thank you for sharing that. That definitely hit a point in my heart. So thank you for that. So I'd love for you to share, if people want to work with you, what does that look like? How do they reach out? And I'm going to ask you for some journal prompts. So why don't you share how people can work with you? And then I always like to leave people with some journal prompts. Please share some journal prompts too.
Sure. So a way to connect with me, the best way is just to go to my website. It's my name, heatherivany.com, Ivany. If you want to work one-on-one with me, there's information there. There's free information there if you just want to get a deeper resonance of how I communicate. So you can play with the lots of different free offerings that are there. I offer a retreat once a year to allow us to be deeply in the mystic. So the experience of the Sacred Journey. So that's happening in November if people want to have an actual in-person experience. And then I always have Akashic trainings and sessions that are available for people to connect with in that way. There's online self-discovery options there too for people. People
Yeah,
want to unlock themselves a bit more. There's a way that they can do that if people want to be using their energetic mastery to be able to create more financial abundance. I have a program called Sovereign Leadership that's available. So lots of information there. And if you're confused, just reach out. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. I work best by actually having a chat.
And I'll include the links in the show notes and etc. So people can, I'm sure people can find you.
Yeah. So journal prompts. I love to lean into the question of who am I becoming? What is the version of my becoming that wants to be expressed in this moment? So that's just giving more real estate to the part of you that wants to grow and expand, because it's so easy for us to default into the part of ourselves that wants to stay the same. So what are you moving into? What are you becoming? How are you growing and expanding? Those that are in like the struggle phase, a great journal prompt that has really served me is, it's a mantra that I use for years, which is just, how easy can it be? And just when I'm in the space of like things feeling really hard, I just sit back, take a deep breath. How easy can it be? Am I making this more complicated than it needs to be? I always am. And it really helps to just like have that perspective.
I love it.
Yeah. I think those two are good ones to play with.
Yeah, maybe add one of the ones we were talking about earlier, which is, if money was no object, what would you do?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a gooder.
Because it's, I really do feel the universe wants to support, the universe, our guides, are supporting us more now than ever before. It just doesn't look like how we want and that support to be, if that makes sense. It's like sometimes we want to, the answers to come through all at once, but we're a soul having a human experience, so we're getting the support. And I'd love for people just to feel the magic that's happening around them, because the support's there. But just be open to that support being so different than maybe what you expected.
I agree. Yes.
So as we close out, I love this space. I've loved sharing this space with you. Thank you for agreeing to join. I feel so blessed. It's such a flowing conversation. And as we said, we opened the records before we began. I can still feel them open. Such a beautiful vibration. So thank you. I'd love for you to close out. If there's any closing comments you have, I'd love for you to close out this episode.
Well, deep gratitude and thanks for taking a leap of faith and inviting me to come on board. It's been an honor to share some time and space with you. One of the things that I've been feeling the whole time through your energy, which is new for me, is just a very gentle, like soothing hand down my back. I'm trying to, like, it feels like it's part of your tribe that works with you. But just like the whole conversation, it's just like a loved one just had their hand like just stroking all the way down my back, and it just felt so sweet. So thank you in the way that you show up in this world. It's an honor to be in your space and spend some time with you in this way. Yeah.
Thank you. I really love that. It feels like it's Sidra, so it's the human that was here, but is no longer in this realm. She definitely has a hand to play in a lot of what happens in my world. So very loving. So I'm glad you got to feel her energy and the vibration. So thank you. And sending you so much love. I feel like you'll be back on this podcast at some point in the future.
Would love it.
And yeah, you're very welcome. Sending you lots of love and light, sending everybody lots of love and light. And truly, truly hope you embrace the energy that's around us. Bye for now.